Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert. Welcome back to the TED Show, my favorite series that we have on the TED Show, and that is Heroes Always Welcome. It's a veteran-centric show where we spotlight, highlight veterans in our community, active military, their families. We really are focusing on having them share their journey and their story with us because, as all of you have told me, it's motivating, inspiring, and a lot of times it sends a light bulb up there and gives you an idea of what you can do when you transition out of the military. Maybe you've got an entrepreneurial spirit, you want to be in real estate, you name it, any of those things. If you sit and talk to my co-host, the one and only Enrique Acosta Gonzalez, and then our special guest, Mark Cady-Archilla.
As I try to figure out my lighting here. Sorry.
Oh, you look good. You look good. All right. So welcome, gentlemen. How are you today?
Great. Thank you.
Good. All right. So I'm happy to have you, Mark, and we'll get to you in a minute, but I have to introduce my co-host with the one and only Enrique Acosta Gonzalez. Good morning, Enrique. Tell them about
Good morning, Ted. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this day where we highlight veterans. This is one of my favorite days of the week. Most call it Monday. I call it Tuesday. And it's amazing how all of this is, it's coming together to highlight veterans. So thanks for having me, Ted. And thanks for joining us, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Enrique.
Absolutely. All right. So, Enrique, before we get to Mark, tell them just a little bit about you. I've got triadleadershipsolutions.com scrolling across the bottom of your screen there, and that is part of you. So tell them a little bit.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing that. Triad Leadership Solutions is a consulting firm where we focus on leadership development, primarily on the inner workings of leadership. A lot of people try to patch the things that happen on the outside. We target the things that are happening on the inside. So, yeah, thanks for highlighting that.
Absolutely. All right. So without further ado, we bring an old friend on the show for the first time. Mark Cady-Archilla is here with us, and Mark's going to share his journey. Welcome, Mark. Excited to have you. Thank you for your service. I got to say that a bunch of times in the show because I really feel it. Before we went live, I told you that the audience loves to know about you, kind of your journey. So Enrique and I will pop in with questions, but we'd love you to kind of give us a point A to point B as much as you want to share.
There's a point A and a point B, and there's a point A plus and a part B minus. It's been quite a journey. So you said you started off an old friend, and I don't quite know how to take that. I just turned 58 a week ago. So
you look great.
And so anybody knows when Ted and I met just a couple of years ago, I had hair. I don't have hair anymore. That's what this friendship has done. No, I'm kidding.
Do you know how many people will go, oh, I get it, Mark. I totally understand that.
Well, so again, thank you very much for both of you for inviting me and asking me to be a part of this today. And I certainly hope that my story will provide some inspiration. Wow. All right. So 58 years ago, I was a week old. I was born in Jacksonville, so I'm a Navy veteran and a Florida native. My father worked for the Department of Corrections, so we lived all over the state of Florida. Many of you might remember Ted Bundy. My father was his counselor when he was on death row. But we lived in multiple places across the state, and eventually we moved to DeLand in my senior year. I went to 3 different high schools. Now, figure out what that was like in my head. But I graduated in DeLand Senior High School in 1982. And that was in June. And then in July, on July 5th, 1982, I went into the Navy and went to boot camp right here in Orlando at RTC Orlando, which for those of you who may not be familiar with that, that is now Baldwin Park and is represented by Blue Jacket Park, which is a city park. It's where the USS Blue Jacket, which was a wooden ship, was on the north end of what we refer to as the grinder. It was also our graduation field. So when you go to Blue Jacket Park, that is actually where we did our graduation parade. It was right there. When I went into the Navy, I was planning on becoming a minister, a Southern Baptist minister. And so I went in as a religious program specialist at the age of 17. I graduated from boot camp, went to A school at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi, in Gulfport in Biloxi. And then was when the controller called and said, okay, we're going to give everybody their assignments. He was rattling off all these ships for everybody. And finally, he came to me and he said, Seaman recruit Cady, what do you think about the U.S. Naval Hospital, Okinawa? And I thought for a moment. I said, you didn't say USS. And he said, no, I didn't. I said, I'll take it. So at the age of 17, I flew off to Okinawa, Japan. I got there in November of 1982, a month and 2 days before my 18th birthday. And I will God bless my sponsor and the two chaplains that I worked with, because when they caught wind that a 17-year-old kid was coming over to operate their chapel, to run their chapel programs at the Naval Hospital, but then also an on-base hospital, they were like, oh, this is not going to be good. This is just not going to be good. And, we had some really, really great times while I was there. I did my entire active duty stint at the U.S. Naval Hospital in Okinawa, Japan.
Wow.
I extended twice and took advantage of the additional 30 days leave that they provided us so that I could come home for longer periods of time when I wanted to do that. But during the time at the Naval Hospital and being in Okinawa, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of the host nationals. And certainly my job as a religious program specialist was to provide support for all chapel programs. So that meant Roman Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, Protestant, all the different religions. And I grew up in a household where my mother is Italian. She was raised Catholic. My father was from New England, and he was Baptist. But my mother converted to Southern Baptist or Baptist when my parents got married, because my father didn't understand the Latin Mass and yada, 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 so on. So I kind of had some of that Catholic upbringing and used to go to Catholic Mass when I went to Pittsburgh to visit the Italian side of the family. And it just made sense to me. And so I converted from Southern Baptist to Roman Catholic, and then planned to become a Catholic priest, a Franciscan. Also at the time that I was in the service, I had a singing career. I sang in choirs and all that here in Florida. But then when I went to Okinawa, the chaplains caught wind that I could sing. And so they started saying, well, you got to sing at this service, you have to do this. And then the Chief Petty Officer's Dinner Theater, and I started singing at that. And so I ended up doing, in the 3.5 years that I was in Okinawa, over 20 concerts.
Wow.
And in Okinawa, in mainland Japan, and in the United States. So that was, a lot of stuff was going on between the age of 17 and 21. I left there in May of 1986, or in June, I should say, and came back to the Naval Training Center to do my, getting out all that stuff. I stayed in the independent ready reserves, but then I signed up for the reserves, for the Navy reserves. So I was with a fleet hospital out of Jacksonville. And then the best time that I had was with the Seabees. Mm-hmm. Yes, the Seabees are the Marine wannabes. And we had a blast. And I operated 9 chapel programs across, because I was with the battalion and we had different detachments from Puerto Rico to North Carolina. And so I was responsible for running all of those chapel programs. So let's go back to my conversion to Roman Catholic and planning on becoming a priest, a Franciscan priest. I got affiliated with the province out of Pittsburgh, which is the St. Augustine province. Was going to go to seminary in Wickliffe, Ohio at St. Charles Borromeo. And then something happened.
Yeah, do share.
So I had sex for the first time. I was 21. And I said, oh, I kind of like that. So,
fair enough.
But I'm really going to throw this for a loop. But it wasn't sex with a woman. It was with a guy. And I came to a real quick understanding that I was gay and that I was suppressing all of that, those feelings, those desires, by saying, I'm going to become a priest. And I didn't have to answer anybody's questions about why I wasn't dating. So that was kind of my workaround. So then I decided not to go into seminary and stayed in the service. Of course, at that particular time, you could say nothing about being gay. I remember I had a friend, his name is Paul Hine, in the Navy. And I found out that he was gay. And we never spoke about it. Never, ever spoke about it. Years later, well, there was a time when we were in Smuggler's Cove, which was the bar behind the barracks. And he asked me on one occasion, what would you do if a gay guy approached you? And I said, I would knock his head off. We'll never forget it.
That was the rule then. I mean, you could not say anything back then in the military at all. Couldn't even hint at it.
Mm-hmm. And working at a naval hospital where 50% of the people that are working in the hospital, the nurses, the corpsmen, the doctors, are gay. But nobody spoke about it. It was just not talked about. So when I came out in Daytona Beach at the Zodiac Bar, I was standing at the bar and I got this tap on my shoulder, and it was Paul. And he said, you hypocrite. I'll never forget it. And we have maintained a friendship over all these years. And he and his husband live in Texas, and they adopted a child who has just graduated from high school and is just doing great things. But anyway, so that was, kind of my coming out, if you will. And I continued with my career in singing. But as a chaplain's assistant, all of the training that I had was administrative. And my first job, other than working at a McDonald's when I got out, was with Donnelly Information Publishing, which was a sister of Donnelly Directory. You all remember the Yellow Pages.
Yeah.
And I was hired by Charlie Oswald in customer service. And I remember
you're out of the Navy now.
No, I was still in the reserves. Mm-hmm. So I was still in the reserves. So I did my, 2 weeks every year, and I did my weekend. I was a weekend warrior, right? And but on the side, I continued to sing and perform and things like that. I eventually opened up my own entertainment company And I was a subcontractor for Disney. I had the opportunity to open for Elton John, sang with the Commodores, just did a lot of stuff. So I had my entertainment.
Is that how did we meet? Where did we meet? This is all coming back to me because I think we met at the Chamber, didn't we?
We met at the Valley National Bank event that they had at, I will never forget you because I saw you up there in glitter and everything. I thought, oh my God, what is
Oh, well, okay. I didn't mean it to bring it to me. I was thinking in my mind, where is it that we met?
Yeah, so that's where we met. And I thought, oh, I have to meet this one. So,
I wonder how many other people have that feeling. It's fascinating. I'll have to do a poll.
Yeah. So
the entertainment part, did that become was that your career path post Navy, or?
It was. I love to sing. I love to perform, but it was also a way that I felt accepted by my father. My father loved to listen to me sing. He loved to see me perform. He loved when the audience applauded and they would roar with applause. It made my dad very, very proud. In 1999, my father died on November 9th, which also happened to be the anniversary of the day that I landed in Okinawa. And November 9th of 1999, I sang at my father's funeral.
Wow.
And I gave up my career in performing. And also during that time, I was working part-time with Watermark, which is the LGBTQ news source for Central Florida, as their sales director. And then eventually got hired away by Orlando Weekly to develop their classified advertising department. And then was hired away by Philadelphia City Paper, where they asked me to come up there and do the same thing that I did here in Orlando with their classified department. Here in Orlando, they were doing about $500,000 a year when I started. In 9 months, we turned that into $1 million in revenue. When I went to Philadelphia, they were doing about $1 million a year cash that was all adult advertising because that was the bread and butter for alternative news weeklies. But I transitioned that into employment advertising, real estate, mind, body, and spirit to other lucrative revenue sources, and took a department from one individual at $1 million a year cash to $2.5 million a year with 6 salespeople, and did that within 2 years.
Let me ask you, we talk a lot on the show about transitioning out of the service. And I want to talk about that. And yours has an added layer to it. Transitioning out of the service into civilian life. Was that difficult for you in general? And do you feel like as a gay man, it was more difficult? Did the people around you outside know that you are gay? Like how? Because a lot of times the heroes come on and they talk about the transition out. It's hard to go from being military into a crazy rat race that we have in corporate America. And right. I'm curious to see if yours was more or less difficult because you had a lot more going on when you got out of the Navy.
Mm-hmm. It was a difficult transition coming from military life. And Enrique, you'll really appreciate this. You get stereotyped and pigeonholed very quickly. Even to this day, people will make reference, oh, well, you're so strict about this because that's your military upbringing or that's your military background. No, it's not. That's just the way that I was raised. Mm-hmm. My military background certainly plays an important role in developing teams because you can do nothing successfully in the military unless you do it as a team. That's what they taught us in boot camp, right? So you move together, you either win together or you lose together. And so that was, I forget where I was going with that.
I think the transition out of the military for a lot of military folks that have come on the show or people that I know, it just like you said, you go from trusting your brothers and sisters. It's a life or death kind of trust, and then you come out into corporate America and you're pigeonholed. You also don't have that kind of trust. That camaraderie generally isn't there when you get out, and so you're having to build it up. And that's sort of that's another veteran walking by. That's sort of what Enrique does. Works with leaders. And I'll let him tell that, but I feel like that's where a lot of veterans get lost. They come out, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to transition that training that they have out into corporate America. And so that's where that lost, missing the military, missing the structure comes into play. And I'll let him, that's his expertise, but I'll let him talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Mark, I thank you, first of all, for sharing your story. I think we're in a time in life that you can actually do that a lot easier. And still, there is some hesitation at times in the company that you're in, because even now today, although it is been sanctioned and everything is good, there's still some hesitation, even in the military, to share your life, right?
Absolutely.
And it's so hard. But we, it's funny. I hear your story, and I'm like, yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. We both came in the military. We both got shipped. We both went to Orlando, right? So I came to Orlando RTC. If you haven't been to Baldwin Park, you need to go. It's a beautiful Blue Jacket monument there with another statue. Beautiful thing that Navy League has done here in Central Florida. But got both shipped to the West Pack, right? You made it all the way to Okinawa. I stopped at Hawaii. I think I was the smarter one.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds awful, Enrique.
Well, we both served at Keesler.
Wow.
I served at Keesler as well. And I had some time with the CBs as well. So it's funny how a lot of people have similarities until you meet and share this. But, your transition at the time was not the same as today, right? And you talk about a difference in mindset for a nation when you transition. So it was like totally harder at your time than it is today, and it still remains to be hard.
Sure.
So you mentioned, getting orders to Okinawa, and you could imagine what those were thinking. Oh, here comes a 17-year-old to do this job. There's a program that we have in the military, which is called the sponsorship program. Sponsors are waiting.
Yep.
Ready. They've been there. They know the ground. You don't have to worry about navigating certain kind of waters. You still have your personality to kind of develop. But do you see something similar happening in the workforce for military coming in? Or how do you feel about the potential of a sponsorship program at corporations that would ease the transition a little better?
I think that's a great idea. I'm going to give a shout out to Gail Snowville, who was my sponsor when I got to Okinawa. And he and I are still close friends. Have been out to visit him and his wife, Terry, out in California. And it was really, really great to see him. But I absolutely agree. I think that not just for military individuals transitioning out, I think that's a great idea that corporations would do that veteran to veteran because our experience is very, very different.
Right.
But I think that that would be a very valuable opportunity for all corporations to assign a sponsor to a new employee, to bring them in, to get them acclimated to the mission and how things work. They will always have a person to go to ask questions, because, you know, it can be very, very intimidating when you go to work for a new employer, right? And that would help to ease that transition for a new employee, for a new hire. I think it'd be a great idea. But yes, my sponsor was very, very important to me. I remember, of course, in Okinawa, steering wheels are on the opposite side, and they drive on the opposite side of the road. And the first thing that I did, when he had a van that he had bought from a Marine, and it was painted camouflage. And then I ended up buying it when Gail left. I bought it and drove it. But anyway, I went to get into the van, and Gail said to me, "Are you going to be driving?" Because I was getting in on the passenger side, which was the driver's side over there. So he and I still joke about that to this day. That's been a long time. That's been 40 years. 40 years. And now I ended up doing 16 years total. And when I got out because of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And that's when I became an activist. That was the very first time that I became an activist. I was in Gulfport, Mississippi, doing my 2 weeks with a bunch of chaplains. We had just fired the M16s, which, by the way, the very first time I ever shot an M16, I got marksman. So don't mess with me. Okay. Anyway,
you can shoot and pray for you.
Because we're the chaplain's bodyguard, so we have to carry a weapon. But anyway, I remember Father Moline listening on his transistor radio, and he said, "They just passed Don't Ask, Don't Tell." And I remember laying on that cot out in the woods saying, "That's it, I'm done." So I turned in my chit asking to go into the IRR. The chaplain said, "Why?" I told him why. He said, "You know, we're not supposed to talk about that." And I said, "I know." He sent it on to the XO. The XO offered me an advancement in pay grade. I was a 4.0 sailor. I was running all of these chapel programs across the battalion. And he said, "Why are you doing this, Petty Officer Cady?" And I said, "Because I'm gay, and I don't agree with Don't Ask, Don't Tell." Bill Clinton compromised with the GOP when he said he was going to allow us to serve openly, and then they compromised with Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I said, if he's willing to compromise that when it comes to me, what else is he willing to compromise when it comes to my safety? So he said, "Okay, we're not going to discuss this, because I'm going to tell you something. The CO will kick you out." And I said, "All right, no problem." So he sent it on to the CO. The CO signed off on it, and it was never discussed. I am now a 50% disabled veteran. And I thank God that the chaplain and the XO watched out for me.
Thank God, because back in that time, it could have gone a completely...
I would have gotten an other than honorable discharge.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I hate to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to do a part 2, because I am going to be kicked out of where I'm at.
Okay.
They're all staring at me in the glass. Mark, any parting words of wisdom? Any way, if somebody's watching the show and they want to reach out to you, maybe share what you're comfortable with. Obviously, you're on social media.
Sure.
How they can find out more about you.
Sure. They can certainly find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on Facebook. They can also reach out to me via email at mcastrategies@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to speak with them. But, you know, there is a lot more to my story. I am also in recovery. So I just want to say this to any veteran out there that may be struggling, particularly at the holidays. Remember that you will feel differently 24 hours from now. So give yourself the time that you need. And sometimes it's not just one day at a time, but it's 1 minute at a time.
Sure is.
And if you can get past this next minute, you can get past the next. So I'll leave you with that.
Wonderful.
Beautiful. And we're going to bring you back on for part 2. I think you have a lot more to share. And thank you. Just like I want to echo what Enrique said. Thank you for sharing that. I was hoping you would share that, but I did. Obviously, I was going to leave it all up to you to do that. And I think it's very brave and very honorable, and means a lot that you shared it on the show. Merry Christmas to you both and to your families.
Yes. Merry
Christmas to everyone out there. Please heed what Mark said. That is so important. And right now, I've had a couple of veterans reach out to me already this week. And so the mindset's there, there's people struggling. It's not just vets, but definitely struggling. So heed what Mark had to say. Reach out to any of us if you're having that feeling, please. There's also 988. There's all sorts of numbers you can dial. But God bless you all. Thank you both for being on the show. We'll see you next time. And we'll have to have Mark Cady-Archilla back on the show